"Adrian, please, you know I didn't steal it," I begged, my hands trembling as the rain soaked through my clothes. His mother's voice cut like glass. "You were never fit for this family," his sister sneered, pointing at me like I was dirt. "Trash. That's all you've ever been." I turned to Adrian one last time, searching his face, hoping for just one word of defense, one sign that he still saw me as his wife. But he didn't even look at me. "You've embarrassed me long enough, Leora," he said coldly. "Get out." The gate slammed shut, leaving me alone in the storm. I had entered that mansion as a wife, and now I was nothing but a beggar. If you felt that pain just now, if you want to know how Leora's life turned from betrayal to power, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and stay with me, because we're going all the way back to where her story began. I don't remember my parents. Not their faces, not their voices, nothing. All I know is that an old woman named Madeline took me in from the foster home when no one else wanted me. Madeline was all I had. She didn't have much herself, just a tiny house with peeling paint and soup that sometimes stretched for days. But she gave me love. She brushed my hair in the mornings, patched up my clothes with tired hands, and every night before bed she whispered, "You're special, child. Don't ever forget that." I clung to those words, maybe too much. When I turned 15, everything fell apart. Madeline got sick, and one morning she just didn't wake up. I sat there for hours beside her, clutching the old quilt we used to share, praying she would open her eyes. But the house was silent. The woman who made me believe I mattered was gone, and with her went the only sense of safety I had ever known. From that day, survival became my only thought. I took whatever jobs I could find, scrubbing floors, carrying trash bags, washing strangers' clothes. Sometimes I went to bed hungry, my stomach growling in the dark. Other nights I walked the streets, picking bottles and scraps to sell. No one cared. People passed by me like I was invisible, but still, every night I whispered up at the sky, "If there's anyone listening, please don't forget me." I wanted a family, a place to belong, someone to look at me and say, "You are mine, and I will never let you go." The stars never answered, so I learned to live with silence, to fight alone, to hide the ache in my chest. But what I didn't know then was that my story wasn't finished. Fate hadn't forgotten me. And the little mole on my skin, the one I had never paid attention to, was going to change everything. Adrian came into my life when I was at my lowest. I still remember the first time he smiled at me. It was the kind of smile that made the rest of the world blur. He was tall, well-dressed, educated, everything I wasn't. And yet, for some reason, he chose to notice me. "You're beautiful, Leora," he told me once, his eyes warm. I laughed because no one had ever said that to me before. Beautiful? Me, with my second-hand clothes and tired eyes? But he looked at me like he meant it. When he held my hand, I felt like I finally mattered. When he said, "I don't care about your past, you're all I need," I believed him. For the first time since Madeline died, I thought maybe I had found my place. So when he asked me to marry him, I didn't hesitate. I said yes, even though deep inside I wondered if I was dreaming. Poor girls like me didn't end up with men like him. Our wedding was small, almost quiet. I didn't care that there were no flowers, no grand celebration. I only cared that I was his wife, that I belonged to someone. But the moment I stepped into his family's mansion, reality slapped me harder than I could ever imagine. His mother's eyes were cold the first time they landed on me. She looked me up and down like I was dirt she wanted swept away. "This is who you've married?" she hissed, her voice sharp enough to cut. No background, no connections, nothing to her name. "Adrian, you've shamed us." I stood frozen, my cheeks burning. I glanced at Adrian, praying he would speak up, defend me, anything. But he stayed quiet, his jaw tight. He didn't even look at me. Then his sister chimed in, her laugh cruel. "She looks more like the maid than a wife." Their words cut deeper than knives, but Adrian's silence, that hurt most of all. He didn't argue. He didn't say, "She's my wife, respect her." He simply lowered his gaze. That silence became the wound that never healed. From that day on, I knew I wasn't welcome there. Every meal felt like a test I couldn't pass. Every glance from his mother was filled with disgust. Every laugh from his sister was a reminder that I didn't belong. And Adrian? He never once stood between me and their cruelty. He let their words fall on me like stones, pretending not to hear. I told myself to be patient, that maybe with time they would accept me, that Adrian would finally find his voice. But deep down, a small whisper in my heart already knew the truth. Love doesn't stay silent when you're being torn apart. Still, I clung to him, because he was all I had, because I had no one else, because I was afraid that, if I let go, I'd have nothing left at all. But sometimes nothing is better than a love that doesn't protect you. I would learn that lesson the hard way, because it wasn't just his mother and sister who stood against me. Soon, someone else would enter the picture. Someone they called the perfect woman. Someone who would make me realize just how alone I truly was in my own marriage. And when she walked into our lives, I began to understand that what I thought was love had only been a cruel illusion. I thought the whispers and sharp looks from Adrian's mother and sister were bad enough. I thought I could swallow them, tell myself I was strong, that one day they would see me as part of the family. But then Celine walked in. She came into the mansion like she belonged there, tall, graceful, with that kind of beauty that made people stop and stare. Everything about her screamed class. The way she moved, the way she spoke, even the way she laughed softly like she was too elegant for the world. Celine has been close to us since she was a child, Adrian's mother told me once, her tone thick with pride. We always thought she'd marry into the family. I stood there smiling politely, while my stomach twisted. Always thought. The words clung to me, like a stain I couldn't wash away. Celine visited often. Too often. She sat at the dining table as though it were her throne, pouring tea for Adrian's mother with practiced grace. She complimented the drapes, the china, the garden, as if everything here was hers, and everyone welcomed her. "Look at Celine," Adrian's mother would say, her eyes glowing. "Such grace, such education, such breeding. If only Adrian had chosen better." The words weren't daggers anymore. They were stones, heavy and crushing. Celine would glance at me when those comments were made, her lips curved in the kind of smile that pretended kindness but carried something sharper. She never said anything cruel directly. She didn't need to. Her presence alone screamed what they all believed: she should have been in my place. Adrian never stopped her visits. Never said a word when his mother compared us, when his sister giggled and whispered in Celine's ear while looking at me. He simply sat there, silent. That silence cut deeper than their insults. One evening, it reached its peak. The house was full of laughter, but none of it was mine. Celine arrived in a silk dress that clung to her like it was made just for her, shimmering under the chandelier lights. Adrian's mother beamed at her like she was seeing the daughter-in-law of her dreams. "Come, Celine, sit by Adrian," his mother urged, and she did, without hesitation. I was asked to serve them, me, the wife, holding a tray of teacups like I was the maid. My hands trembled as I walked into the room, the laughter around me a wall I couldn't break through. Celine took a sip of her tea, her eyes glinting as she turned toward Adrian. Then she laughed softly, that gentle, ladylike laugh that made everyone lean in closer. "Your wife," she said, tilting her head toward me, "doesn't seem to know how to behave in high society. Perhaps I could teach her." For a moment, the world stopped. Then the room erupted in laughter. His mother, his sister, even the servants chuckled behind their hands. Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. I stood frozen, the tray heavy in my hands. My chest burned. My eyes stung, but I forced the tears back. And Adrian? He didn't laugh, but he didn't defend me either. He sat there, silent, lowering his gaze as though he hadn't heard anything at all. That silence screamed louder than any insult Celine could have spoken. It told me exactly where I stood in his world. I wasn't his wife. I wasn't family. I was nothing. And as Celine's laughter rang in my ears, I realized something colder than all their cruelty. This humiliation was only the beginning. Every family dinner turned into a test I could never pass. If I held the fork wrong, Adrian's sister would sigh dramatically and roll her eyes as if I had committed some great sin. If I cooked, his mother would taste it with a tight smile before comparing it to Celine's refined touch. "This is fine," she would say, "but Celine makes it lighter, more elegant. You should really learn from her." If I dared to speak, someone always cut me off before I could finish my sentence. My words floated in the air, unfinished, unimportant, as though my voice had no right to exist in their house. And through it all, Adrian sat quietly. He didn't reach for my hand under the table, didn't look at me to show I wasn't alone, didn't speak a single word in my defense. His silence carved wounds I couldn't hide. But the worst wasn't the dinners. The worst was when the humiliation became public. It happened at a grand banquet, one of those nights where the chandeliers sparkled above us, and the hall was filled with people in gowns and tailored suits. I dressed carefully that evening, wearing the one decent gown I owned, hoping, just hoping, that maybe tonight, Adrian would stand beside me. But when I arrived, Celine was already on his arm. Her silk gown shimmered under the lights, her hand rested lightly on his sleeve, as if it belonged there, as if I was the one intruding. The whispers started almost immediately. "Ah, that must be his wife. She's stunning. A perfect match. Then who is that other woman trailing behind?" Their voices stung worse than knives. I wanted to scream, to tell them I was the wife, I was the one who wore the ring. But my throat closed and my pride kept me standing in silence. I spent the night in shadows, smiling faintly when someone looked my way, though inside I was crumbling. Every laugh Celine shared with Adrian felt like another betrayal. Every approving nod from his mother felt like a nail in the coffin of my dignity. When we returned home, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Adrian," I said, my voice trembling. "Why? Why would you let her walk in with you like that? Do you know what people were saying? Do you know how humiliated I felt?" He didn't even look ashamed. His eyes were cold, impatient, as if I were a burden he was tired of carrying. "Stop making scenes, Leora," he snapped. "Do you think it looks good for you to complain like this? Why can't you learn from Celine? She knows how to carry herself. She knows how to behave in public." Those words hit harder than any slap could. Learn from Celine. The woman who had taken my seat at the table, my place at his side. The woman who had everything I didn't. I stared at him, waiting, praying for him to take it back, to soften, to reach for me, to say he didn't mean it. But he didn't. He simply turned away, leaving me alone in the heavy silence of our bedroom. That night, I buried my face into the pillow and cried silently. Not just because his mother and sister hated me, not just because Celine hovered like a ghost that wouldn't leave, but because the man I had married, the man I thought would be my home, had never truly been mine. And as the tears soaked the sheets, a bitter truth began to creep into my heart. If this was love, then maybe I had never known love at all. And maybe it was time I stopped waiting for Adrian to choose me. It happened so suddenly I almost thought it was a nightmare. Adrian's sister stormed into the living room one afternoon, clutching a velvet box in her hand. Her face was pale with outrage, her voice loud enough for the whole house to hear. "My necklace is gone," she cried. "The one Mother gave me for my birthday. I know who took it." Her eyes locked on me like sharp blades. "Her. Leora." I froze where I stood. "What? No, I would never." But she didn't let me finish. She opened the box, showing it was empty. "Who else could it be? She's always wandering around, pretending she belongs here. Of course she took it." The words spread like fire. Adrian's mother appeared, elegant as always, her lips curved into a thin smile that wasn't a smile at all. "I warned you, Adrian," she said, her voice dripping with poison. "This girl was never fit for us. No background, no breeding. And now she shows her true colors." I shook my head desperately. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would break my ribs. "I didn't take it. I swear I didn't. Why would I steal from this house when I already—" "You don't belong here," Adrian's sister snapped, cutting me off. "You never did. Trash can never turn into treasure." The words stabbed into me, one after another, until my knees felt weak. I turned to the only person I thought might save me. "Adrian." He sat there, silent at first, his face unreadable. I begged, my voice trembling. Please, Adrian, you know me. You know I wouldn't do this. Tell them the truth. For a moment I thought I saw hesitation in his eyes, a flicker of doubt. My heart leapt, clinging to hope, but then his lips parted and his words shattered me. You've embarrassed me long enough, Leora. His tone was cold, final. Get out. I stared at him, unable to breathe. Adrian? He didn't even look at me. The guards came. His mother ordered them to open the gates. His sister smiled in triumph. Celine stood at the corner, her eyes lowered, but I could feel her satisfaction radiating in the silence. The last thing I heard before the doors closed behind me was his mother's voice, sharp and merciless. You were never one of us. You never will be. And then the rain came. Cold, heavy, relentless. It soaked through my clothes in seconds, plastered my hair to my face, and stung my eyes as I stood outside their mansion. I had entered that house as a wife, and I left it as nothing. No suitcase, no money, no place to go. Just me standing at those gates, my heart breaking, my pride in shreds, my body trembling under the storm. People passing by glanced at me with pity, or worse, with curiosity, like I was a spectacle, some beggar thrown out for daring to reach too high. I wanted to scream, to pound on the gates and demand they let me back in. I wanted to claw at Adrian's face until he looked at me and remembered I was his wife. But I didn't. I turned, slowly, my tears mixing with the rain. One step, then another, each one heavier than the last. And as I walked away from the mansion, with nothing but the clothes on my back, one thought burned inside me. If I was trash to them, then one day I would rise as something they could never destroy. The storm swallowed me whole, but storms never last forever. The weeks after I was thrown out blurred into a nightmare that never ended. I wandered the streets with no direction, no destination. The same people who used to whisper behind my back when I entered the mansion now laughed openly as they saw me with torn clothes and dirt-stained shoes. Wasn't that Adrian's wife? Look at her now, picking garbage. She thought she was someone, but she's nothing. Their words stung worse than the cold wind. I collected bottles, scraps, anything I could sell for a few coins. Some days it was just enough to buy a piece of bread. Other days I went to bed with nothing but the ache of hunger gnawing at me. Nights were the hardest. I slept on sidewalks, curled up on old newspapers, my body trembling from the chill that crept into my bones. The city lights glared above me, but none of their brightness reached the emptiness inside my chest. I grew weaker. My hands shook whenever I tried to lift heavy bags of trash. My reflection in the shop windows became a stranger. Hollow eyes, pale cheeks, lips cracked from thirst. Sometimes I thought about giving up, about lying down and never waking up, about letting the world swallow me whole because maybe then the pain would stop. But in those darkest nights when my body was breaking and my heart wanted to give in, I heard her voice, Madeline, soft, gentle, the way she used to speak when she tucked me into bed. You are meant for something more. I would close my eyes, clutching those words like a lifeline, and somehow I got up the next morning. Somehow I kept walking even when my legs ached and my stomach screamed. One evening, after a long day of scavenging, I sat on the edge of the street, clutching a small bag of bottles I hoped to sell. The sky was bruised with clouds, heavy with rain. I pulled my knees to my chest and whispered to myself, how much longer can I live like this? The answer didn't come, but fate did, because the very next morning, while searching for scraps near a towering glass building, I stumbled into a chance that would change my life forever. I never thought pushing a mop could feel like salvation. But the janitor's job I found at a large company gave me something I hadn't had in weeks, stability. A roof over my head, a little food in my belly, work that, at the very least, gave me dignity. Every morning I arrived before the sun rose. I swept the marble lobby floors until they shone, scrubbed restrooms, and emptied trash bins that overflowed with the leftovers of wealthy men and women who barely noticed I existed. And most days, I didn't mind being invisible. After all the mockery, after Adrian's betrayal, invisibility felt safer than being seen. Until one morning fate ripped that invisibility away. It was quiet in the lobby, just me and the sound of my broom against the tiles when I saw him, an older man shuffling slowly across the floor. His arms were stacked with folders and papers, too many for him to carry. Before I could even call out, the pile slipped. Papers scattered everywhere, fluttering like broken wings across the lobby floor. I dropped my broom and rushed forward. "Let me help you, sir." I knelt down, gathering the papers as quickly as I could. He lowered himself carefully, his hands shaking slightly as he reached for the scattered sheets. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice low but steady. I handed him a stack, smiling faintly despite my exhaustion. "It's no problem at all. Happens to me all the time." That was when it happened. His eyes, sharp, gray, filled with a weight I couldn't explain, lifted to mine. For a moment he just stared. Then his gaze dropped lower, to the neckline of my faded uniform where my collar had slipped slightly, revealing a small mole near my collarbone. He froze. His hands trembled violently now, the papers almost spilling again. His lips parted, his breath catching as though he'd seen a ghost. "Child!" His voice broke, raw and unsteady. "Where did you get that mark?" I blinked, confused. "This?" I touched the mole lightly. I was born with it. Why? His face drained of color, then flushed with something I couldn't name. Tears filled his eyes as he whispered, "It can't be, after all these years." I stared at him, my heart thudding uneasily. "Sir, do you know me?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a small gold locket. His hands shook as he opened it and turned it toward me. Inside was a picture of two young people, a man and a woman I had never seen before, and in the middle, a baby with dark eyes. My breath caught in my throat. That baby had the same mole on the collarbone. He clutched the locket to his chest, tears rolling freely now. "You're her. My granddaughter, the one we lost in the crash, the one we thought had died." I felt the ground tilt beneath me. No, that's not possible. My parents— "Your parents," he interrupted gently, "were my children. They died in that car crash. But you survived. Somehow, you survived." My vision blurred, my hands trembling as I backed away slightly. "No, this has to be a mistake. I was raised by Madeline. I don't belong to anyone." He reached for me, his grip firm despite the tremor in his fingers. "You belong, child. You belong to me, and I will prove it." The very next week, I was led into a hospital, my blood drawn by silent doctors in white coats. I sat there, my heart pounding as I wondered if this man was delusional, or if everything I knew about myself had been a lie. The results came back. The monarch of the dynasty stood before me, his hands trembling again, but this time with joy. "It's true," he whispered. "You are mine. You are the blood of kings. My granddaughter, my heir." The words echoed in my ears. Unbelievable, impossible. Me, the girl who once collected trash just to survive. The woman cast out like garbage by her own husband. The beggar who slept on cold sidewalks. Now, the sole heir to an empire. My life had just been rewritten, and somewhere, far away, the family who threw me out had no idea the storm that was about to fall on them. My life changed overnight. One day I was pushing a mop across cold marble floors. The next I was sitting in the back of a black limousine, the city flashing by as cameras clicked wildly outside. The monarch, my grandfather, made the announcement himself. The world watched as he held my hand and declared, "This is my granddaughter, the sole heir to my empire." I should have felt only joy, but my chest was a storm. The newspapers called me the miracle heiress. Magazines printed my face with headlines like "From Orphan to Heiress" and "The Lost Princess Returns." Reporters praised the way I walked, the way I dressed, the way I smiled. But when I looked in the mirror, I still saw the girl who once picked bottles from the gutter just to survive. I was given gowns, jewels, and a seat at tables where powerful men and women leaned close, eager for my approval. They flattered me, courted me, begged to be seen by me. Their voices dripped with admiration, but in the back of my mind I still heard other voices, mocking, cruel, unforgiving. "She looks more like the help than a wife. You're nothing but trash. Get out. I remembered the rain soaking me as the gate slammed shut. I remembered Adrian's cold eyes as he told me I had embarrassed him long enough, and I vowed I would never forget. The lessons came quickly. Grandfather insisted I be trained, not just in etiquette but in power. How to sit in a room and own it, he said. How to speak so no one dares to interrupt you. How to turn silence into a weapon. I studied languages, business, politics. Tutors came and went, bowing deeply, always respectful. At night, I practiced my smile in the mirror, the one that charmed strangers but hid the ache underneath. But beneath the gowns, beneath the diamonds, beneath the new name that now carried weight and respect, I held on to the memory of the girl who was kicked out into the rain. Because she was the one who would make them pay. One evening, as I sat at a gala surrounded by admirers, a waiter passed by carrying a tray of champagne. For a second, I caught my reflection in the glass flute. Not the heiress, not the miracle. Just Leora, the woman who had been humiliated, discarded, broken. And in that moment I realized something. The world now saw me as untouchable, as powerful, as someone to be feared. But soon, very soon, Adrian and his family would see me again. And when they did, they wouldn't just recognize me. They would regret the day they ever threw me away. I had dreamed of this day, not in detail, but in feeling. The faces of those who had once laughed at me, who had thrown me out into the rain like I was less than dirt. I had imagined them crawling. I had imagined the shame twisting their lips. But never once did I think it would feel this quiet, this calm, when the moment finally came. Adrian's family entered the grand meeting hall nervously, their expensive shoes echoing against the marble. They no longer looked like the rulers of the world. Their suits were wrinkled, their eyes hollow with sleepless nights. Even Adrian, who once stood so tall, walked in with his shoulders bent, as if the weight of his failures was too much to carry. They did not see me at first. I sat at the far end of the long table, dressed in white silk that caught the light, almost glowing. My hair was pinned neatly, my chin lifted. Guards flanked the doors, their eyes cold. When they finally noticed me, a gasp broke from Adrian's mother. Her hand went to her mouth, his father's face drained of color. Adrian froze in his tracks, staring at me as if he had seen a ghost. Leora, he whispered. My name trembled on his lips, as though it burned to say it. I let the silence stretch. I wanted them to feel every heartbeat, every second of it pressing against their ears. Finally, Adrian's father cleared his throat. Your Highness, he said, his voice stiff, unsure. We didn't know. You didn't care, I interrupted softly. My voice carried across the room, sharp enough to cut. Adrian's mother stepped forward, her eyes wide. We were foolish, misguided. If only we had known who you truly were. I raised one hand. She stopped instantly. And if I had been no one? I asked. If I had remained the girl in the rain, would you still call me foolish, or would you call me worthless? Their silence answered everything. Adrian moved then. He stepped closer, his face twisted with desperation. He looked thinner, weaker than I remembered, but his eyes still held that same pleading charm he once used on me. Leora, listen to me. I was wrong. I made mistakes, but I did care for you. You must believe me. I laughed, quiet, bitter. The sound seemed to echo in the still air. Care for me? You watched as your family humiliated me. You joined them. You stood by the gate and let me beg, Adrian. Do you remember? His jaw clenched. His hands curled into fists, then loosened. He dropped to his knees right there on the polished floor. His voice broke as he whispered, Forgive me, Leora, please. I made a mistake. The sight might have once shattered me. Years ago, I would have rushed to him, wiped his tears, begged him to stand. But not now. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers brushing the armrest. Calm, steady. This was not the girl who once cried in the rain. This was the woman who had survived it. The mistake, I said slowly, my words sharp as glass, was mine. Believing you ever loved me. Adrian flinched as if struck. His father opened his mouth, desperate to plead again, but I stood. The sound of my heels against the floor echoed as I walked past them. I didn't look at Adrian's bowed head, didn't pause at his mother's trembling hands, or his father's pale face. I walked straight to the doors. But just before I left, I turned slightly, my gaze cold. You showed me no mercy when I had nothing. Do not expect any now. And then I stepped out. The fall of Adrian's family was faster than anyone had imagined. With my grandfather's support, every ally they once had cut ties overnight. Their businesses crumbled, their wealth scattered, their name dragged through the mud. Newspapers splashed headlines of bankruptcy, betrayal, and scandal across their pages. I watched from a distance, calm, almost detached, as the empire they once lorded over burned to ash. Adrian tried in the weeks that followed to reach me. Letters sent to the palace were returned unopened. Calls never went through. Once I even saw him outside the gates, the same gates where I had once begged. He was shouting my name, but I did not go to him. Guards carried him away like the pitiful shadow he had become. Poetic, wasn't it? The same gates that once stood as a symbol of my humiliation now became the barrier that shut him out. But revenge, I learned, is not about shouting or rage. It is about silence. It is about walking away while the other person drowns. And oh, how he drowned. Leora's story is more than revenge. It's about survival. It's about the quiet strength we all carry when the world tells us we're nothing. Many of us know what it feels like to be overlooked, to be pushed aside, to be treated like we don't matter. But just like Leora, your story isn't finished yet. Sometimes the very people who laugh at you today will one day wish they had treated you better. So if life feels heavy right now, remember this: your pain can be the fire that shapes you. Your struggle can be the reason you rise. And when you finally stand tall, you won't need to shout for the world to notice. You'll simply walk forward and they'll see it for themselves. If Leora's journey touched you, the pain, the betrayal, the strength she found, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter of her story.